All of it happened very quickly for me. I didn't expect to be in the AFL system when I was starting year 12 and was just concentrating on my studies. But yeah, had a bit of a lucky run, I guess, and then was lucky enough to get picked up by the Cats at the end of 2006. So my first couple of years at Geelong, I guess I was still really getting used to the idea of me being an AFL player and in an AFL system. It was a very enjoyable couple of years, made some fantastic friends and I guess enjoyed parts of the lifestyle that comes with being a footballer in Geelong. I guess when I started to when I started to want to play AFL footy more and had more desire to sort of cement myself in the senior Geelong team was when I started to put a lot more pressure on myself. I started to feel the pressure externally a bit more in that I'd been at the club for a few years, they'd signed me for another few years, and I was, I guess, feeling that weight of expectation outside the club, inside the club, and most of all, probably from myself and my own perfectionistic ways. So I remember sort of coming towards the end of pre-season in my fourth season and feeling incredibly anxious for about a week leading up to our final testing and was just all putting it on myself that I had to win that sort of race, and that sort of filtered through into how I approached training and weight, and that I had to be up there with the best of them, and these guys have been training for 10, 12 years plus, but I was really putting unrealistic expectations on myself, and that really affected my enjoyment levels definitely, and my life outside of footy as well, as I guess was very, very stressed. And that filtered through into me waking up in the middle of the night, being stressed about a training session, being worried about what a coach is thinking about me and where I stand with the playing group, and right through to sort of, I guess, the normal signs and symptoms of depression in terms of having trouble eating and I guess not seeing the point of doing certain things because they don't or they weren't making me feel like they normally make me feel. So I think I recognised things weren't right, but certainly didn't recognise it as a mental health issue for quite a while, and that was a big part of what led to me becoming so unwell. My response when I was feeling unwell was to withdraw quite a lot. So to then go to a gathering or something that I would normally go to was a huge effort, and the only way I could do that was by having a few drinks beforehand, trying to release some of that anxiety and thinking that alcohol or thinking that alcohol was the way to do that. And that probably happened 2 or 3 times at sort of major things I really wanted to go to, and I didn't write myself off for anything, but was certainly went backwards in my recovery considerably for the next couple of weeks, and then that sort of anger at myself for having done that each time really exacerbated all my symptoms and really pushed me further and further away. The Geelong doctor was fantastic at sort of pulling me aside and checking in with how I was going, and he quite subtly mentioned it could be something mental health related, and I was open to the idea of that to some degree, but also pushed back that I'd like to get some blood tests and some other things, because in a way I was thinking that'll be a lot easier to deal with than a mental health issue. We used to have to fill in a little tablet at the start of each morning when you get to the club about how you're feeling, and I probably wouldn't be completely honest in how my sleep was the night before and how I was feeling, and mostly out of sort of I don't want to go through those conversations with the sports science team as well as the doctor. So I kept it pretty, I kept it very small and hidden. A lot of it was around what I thought the perception would be of me if I was to say I've got depression or a mental health issue, if I've got to take time off to see a psychologist or a psychiatrist. How is that going to impact on my, how I'm seen by my fellow players, and if that's going to affect me getting a game by the coaching staff, if that's going to affect me getting a contract, all these sorts of things that are so common and for a young player in the AFL system that you do worry about anyway, where you sort of stand within a club and you're trying to make your mark. So I guess my perception and uneducated perception of mental health led to me thinking that this is something I need to avoid for the greater good of my career. A lot of my time when I was initially unwell was put into covering up what was happening. When I was, I guess, in the really deep stages of my major depression, there was a few moments where they were quite scary for myself in terms of my own safety, and for a couple of weeks I'd been at a stage where I needed to have someone around me. There was one particular day where Dad was home and I'd had some sleeping tablets that I'd got off the doctor months prior and hadn't sort of used. And I was sitting in my bedroom floor, on my bedroom floor, for probably a couple of hours with this bottle of tablets in this, I guess, trance of, I really want to get rid of this pain. I don't know how to do it. I can't see an easy fix. And I guess looking at these bottles of pills as an option that is the quickest way to remove that pain. And when I did snap out of that, it was this moment of, I can't continue to live this way for any longer, and I don't want my life to end. Well, that was the time I made the decision to go to hospital for that 3-week period, and that was really the turning point of, I guess, enough's enough, and I'm really going to do what I can and seek as much help as I can to get through this period of my life. Initially, when I was first feeling unwell, it was only the club doctor who really had any idea that I was having a rough time. That period in the hospital was an initial week of, I guess, just getting used to the environment, going through some education sessions on a basic level, but then I was able to do a 2-week anxiety and depression intensive education class or group. And that was the real turning point for me buying into and finding out what mental health issues really are and what they mean for me, and what I'm currently going through is something that is an illness and not something that's my fault and that I've somehow brought upon myself. So all my friends back home and people who I've ever come across were all now aware that I was going through a mental health issue and a serious mental health issue. And initially that was my worst nightmare, and all that effort I'd taken to hide and cover up my issues were now exposed. But after a couple of days, there was this huge weight lifted off my shoulders. I wanted to open up as much as I can. It was sort of, everything was out there as it was. So for me, I sort of made a choice then that part of my recovery was going to be, talking about this more and more, particularly with young men and and peers, I guess try and open the door for those conversations so that someone doesn't have to go through the similar sort of experiences that I did. So Thick and Thin is a mental health initiative in the Victorian Amateur Footy Association, the VAFA. It's started this year by Scott Sherwin, who's the captain at Scotch, and a few other guys who cover a few clubs in the league. And it's basically a group of guys have got together and have thought there isn't probably enough happening in terms of mental health conversations, looking out for your mate, all those sorts of very important messages that I try and bring to the sessions I do here at Headspace, and trying to bring them to that footy club environment where mental health discussions are welcomed and open and are seen to be okay, and that getting help is seen to be okay, would make a huge impact on a lot of people's lives.